What an amazing journey it must have been to take 11,000 people and use those statements to demonstrate how the system failed to protect these children. Welcome to the Glamorous Grind, where grit meets glamour and ambition isn't afraid to challenge institutions.
Today's episode is about justice, not in theory, but in action.
Even though it's money, that's all we can get for them. It's still a symbol. They're not alone. They have a voice.
Attorney Blake Woodhall led the charge in a historic $4 billion settlement against Los Angeles County for its systemic failure to protect children in the foster care system.
There's like some life-changing type experiences that you have with folks when you meet them in person and you tell them, hey, I settled your case.
You can't change what happened to them, but you're making them feel heard, making the world know that what happened to them matters, but you're also helping the potential victims of the future. So you're literally changing the world.
This case is monumental. It is not just legal history, it's human impact, and we're honored to have Blake back with us to discuss how everything went down.
Blake, thank you so much for coming back with us.
We were super excited to hear the case finally settled, and we want to know more about it. Because the last time you came on a show, you couldn't answer some questions because it was confidential and it wasn't done yet. It was in the works. Now it's public. It's been published everywhere on the internet, and we want to know what was going on behind the scenes.
Thanks for having me back. Appreciate it. So yeah, the case, just in general, or summary fashion, it was a case against the County of Los Angeles for systemic sexual abuse occurring over a period of about 65 years. It included foster care cases, camp, detention center, juvenile hall type cases, and then the one that I primarily worked on were cases arising out of abuse, sexual abuse at McLaren Hall, which was a temporary shelter for foster kids. When I was here the last time, I wasn't able to answer a lot of questions, but we have reached a settlement with the County of Los Angeles. That settlement is for $4 billion, and it will cover claims of approximately 11,000 people.
You said this is about systemic abuse over the last 65 years. I've seen a news article where it's you with about 6 other attorneys in the photograph who are all working on this with you on the case. All, I think, heroes, because you've done something tremendous that has never been done before. And you've helped so many people that now are at least 65 years old, right? Because if
some even older.
So can you tell us more about the age group of people who've suffered and lived with this for so many years that are now getting justice?
Well, first of all, I do want to acknowledge the other lawyers that were involved in this. It was a monumental task to get this done, as you could imagine. Countless hours in working up the cases.
Can I ask you, how long has the litigation been ongoing before it settled?
Well, we got our first McLaren Hall case 4 years ago, and it really it ramped up from there. The primary negotiation with the county went on for about a year, and there were some really, really talented lawyers on each side, by the way, to get this thing done. So I did want to acknowledge those other lawyers, but in terms of the victims, because that's really what this is about, it's about the victims. And you're right. A lot of these people have been living with the subsequent damage of being sexually abused as a child. For example, I have a case of a client who was abused in 1958 in McLaren Hall.
How old was he or she at the time?
She was, I want to say, 10 years old. So she's what would that make her? Late 70s, 80s. And she's been living with it for that whole time. And to see all sorts of different types of ways people are affected by being sexually abused as children has certainly been, it's devastating. It's tragic. But what we've been finding with the announcement of this settlement and talking to our clients now about it is many of them, the vast majority of them, feel like they finally have some semblance of justice. And even though it's money, that's all we can get for them was money. It's still a symbol to them that, first of all, they're not alone. Secondly, that they have a voice, and that voice was given to them by us filing a civil lawsuit against the county on their behalf.
It's crazy that it's 11,000 people that were sexually abused. That's kids, 11,000 children.
I've identified a number of things that are relatively across the board in terms of the type of damage this has caused. One is that my clients typically have they've either never finished school or they've had to take a much different unorthodox route to finish school later in life, say as an adult. So most of them didn't graduate from high school, let alone college. Most of them have spotty employment, so they have difficulties maintaining gainful employment. I have one client who's 60 years old, and he's had 200 jobs in his life. And oftentimes that's because of a lack of trust in authority. Most have very, very difficult times in relationships, maintaining a relationship with somebody, a partner. So that's a devastating damage. Oftentimes they have a criminal background. They've just resorted to, the type of behavior that's impulsive and damaging. Oftentimes because they also don't have a regular job, so they don't have any money, so they need to go engage in criminal activity to survive. So those are sort of very common types of damages that we see, and oftentimes a client will have every single one of those. I mean, just one of those alone creates instability in your life and makes it difficult to manage. But all of them combined, frankly, I don't know how some of them even have made it this far.
So immense psychological, emotional damage as a result of this. I mean, and foundationally, what happens to you as a child forms kind of the foundation of your life. So that completely makes sense. But I do want to ask the question that I think most viewers will be wondering is, how do you prove damages? After 20 years, after 30 years, I'm sure witnesses are either gone or dead. Like, how do you prove that A, this happened, and then B, that, a lot of these issues in these individuals' lives are attributable to the sex abuse as opposed to whatever issues resulted in them landing in the foster care system? How do you differentiate that? Are there experts involved?
With the size of this case, those types of things that you talked about are very prevalent in, say, a one-on-one type case where you have one per plaintiff and you're suing the foster care system, or you're suing the school district or the Little League organization or the YMCA or something, right? Here in this context, it was literally impossible to do that detailed of discovery because, first of all, it would take 25 years to get through that many cases if you tried to litigate them like an individual case. So in this context, what we did was we had them sign these fact sheets, and they're signed under penalty of perjury. So it's like that's their statement. It's as if they had their deposition taken or written discovery that we do as litigators, as lawyers. And that's what's essentially going to be evaluated to assess their damages. And they were allowed to provide an impact statement as to how it affected them, depression and anxiety and triggers. And they were able to be very detailed with that type of information, and we helped them do that. So we really didn't do a lot of traditional methods of discovery to prove up the case. It was really more of a person saying, hey, I was in McLaren Hall at this particular time, giving very detailed information that was corroborated many times by other people involved as well. And then sometimes some people have had some therapy, or they have had some things that we could produce documents to show that. But for the most part, there really wasn't a ton of discovery. We took some depositions of some principal people who are still alive, some witnesses, some whistleblowers, and some other folks. But at the end of the day, that's how we were able to, quote unquote, prove damages, was essentially self-corroborating by people giving their own statements in their own words.
Were any of the abusers still alive and potentially already convicted of any crimes related to any of the 11,000 people?
So a lot of people are dead, as you probably can imagine. Some are still alive. We don't have any ability to criminally prosecute anybody, and we certainly, didn't expect the district attorney to turn around and go, "Oh, we're going to charge somebody from the 1980s." They just didn't have that kind of bandwidth to really do, even the county, to do some serious deep dive on the alleged perpetrators. Oftentimes also, some of our clients were 5, 6, 9, 12 years old. They don't even remember the names of their abuser. They can give a physical description. We saw a lot of very similar physical descriptions during particular time periods, and some people had like a tattoo that they remember or a nickname or something like that. But it was even hard to identify a lot of the perpetrators because of memory loss, because of the passage of time. There's more awareness now. It is still different times. I'm not saying that kids aren't abused anymore, but the real answer to your question, though, as you know, sometimes the only way you get people to make change is you hit them in the pocketbook. And that's what's happening here. And there's a lot of people that are pissed off over the fact that the county's paying $4 billion. I'm not the most popular person around, being, I've been called a lot of names for this, for doing this, because of the negative aspect of this. Oh, this is just a money grab. These are just the lawyers coming in. They don't really care about people, things like that. But if even the taxpayers, get pissed off enough to where they're not electing these people anymore and they're running these people out and we're getting the right people in. From the power that I have as a lawyer in filing civil lawsuits, that's all I can do. So the only thing I can get is money. But I also know that money is a powerful tool to get people to change.
What an amazing journey it must have been to take 11,000 people, put together statements on behalf of all of them, and use those statements to demonstrate how the system failed to protect these children. The perpetrators, obviously awful, and I also wish we, as a mom of 3, we could do something to punish them. But we punished the underlying system that failed our kids. And I do believe that because the settlement is so high, because it's all over the news, these types of things will not happen again on that type of systematic level.
Yeah.
And that was you.
Awareness certainly leads to change, and awareness communicated in the right way. And that's what we're hoping with some of this. And, the thing I've actually been focusing on more than the amount, like the amount is sort of shocking, and it's historical, right? Everybody's talking about it's never been done before on this scale, and there's never been a government entity who's ever paid this amount of money in a settlement of any kind, and blah, blah, blah. And that's true. But to me, the issue is the number of victims. The amount of money mirrors the number of victims. If there weren't this number of victims, the amount wouldn't have been this much. So yeah, you guys need to get your shit together. And then number one, acknowledge what's been done to these people over decades of time. I mean, to actually think about that for a second, 65 years. I mean, that's wild. And it's inexcusable for there to be that many victims over that much time. And these are just the victims that came forward.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, yeah, it's $4 billion and you might be offended by that, but why aren't you more offended by 11,000 people? They mirror each other. That's why the amount is what it is.
And if it's 11,000 who came forward, there are many who already died and took their
That's right.
lives that were impacted, that didn't make it this far in life. How did y'all join forces and turn it into a class action?
It kind of happened organically. And I always say it's not a true class action. It was called a coordinated proceeding, which is a little different, but we don't need to get into the distinction right now. But it sort of happened organically. I remember specifically, and I still have the chart, I'm going to frame it someday, where that we internally made. It was like a little pie chart and had a timeline. And we had 9 clients from McLaren Hall. And I have this awesome paralegal, Michelle Keeks. I got to give her a shout out. She's like the greatest paralegal in the history of paralegals. And she made this little color-coded pie chart. And it was like, she was like, this is a little weird, Blake. We have 9 McLaren Hall cases, and like 3 of them are from this particular time period, and 3 of them for this time period, and 2 for here. And they all, one's in the 70s, and they're like, this is really strange. There might be something here. So internally, we started really, looking more into that. And then all of a sudden, these people just came out of the woodwork.
How did you find them? Did you
we advertised. We said, did you ever get abused in McLaren Hall? But the bottom line is we ended up with about 850 clients, okay? When you're first sort of starting out and you're filing these complaints, you don't really know what the universe is out there, right? Then all of a sudden, we would go to a case management conference or something, and they would go, and the judge would go, I'm getting a bunch of these cases, and then all of a sudden you find out, oh, this other law firm is also filing a bunch of cases. Let me call them up and see what's going on. And then for McLaren Hall, in a coordinated proceeding, there always needs to be a liaison counsel, which is like leadership counsel. And so what happened was myself and another lawyer from a different firm, Slater and Slater, who we had the majority of the McLaren Hall cases, we became leadership counsel or liaison counsel for that particular case. Then what happened is we originally we had them sort of separated into 3 buckets. We had the detention center, juvenile hall cases in one bucket. We had true foster care cases where a person was abused by a foster father, and then McLaren Hall. And so we were originally going to try to mediate with the county on those individually, but then we decided that the only real way we could do this is to pool sort of our resources together. And we just got together and we were the primary ones who were negotiating with the county. So if you had like 3 or 4 cases or even 100 cases, you really weren't involved in the main negotiation with the county. And that's the way all coordinated proceedings go. That's the way the Roman Catholic Church cases are going. There's always a liaison counsel on both sides, by the way. The county hired, a bunch of different law firms too to represent them for particular cases, but there was leadership counsel for the defendants as well. So that's really the only way it works, though, because if you get everybody involved, it just doesn't happen. But the actual coordination of everything really did just kind of happen organically. And then through discussions with the county, we learned that, hey, we need to do this all together because it's not going to be manageable.
Could you share with us the most touching story out of all those people that you've worked with and how it impacted their life? I
actually brought a statement that somebody sent me. And I don't know if it's like the most touching, but this is just an example of kind of the stuff that we get from clients. And we don't always get these, by the way. Sometimes our clients can be challenging, but this is from a guy, and I won't say his name just for privacy reasons, but he sent this to us after the settlement, and he's in prison. And by the way, we had to get 850 people to sign releases. And a lot of those can be done via DocuSign, things like that. But I actually was going to prisons, going to jail. I was going to convalescent hospitals. I was going to all these different places to get clients who otherwise couldn't DocuSign things to physically sign the releases. And there's some really neat, it makes me emotional, but there's like some life-changing type experiences that you have with folks when you meet them in person and you tell them, hey, I settled your case. I'm going to get you some money. And just some wild things. So anyway, we got this from a guy who's in prison. And he says, to everyone involved, I just wanted to thank everyone helping to get us some kind of justice. I've had a really hard life, and I've been told it's because of the emotional and mental damage done to me as a kid. You people are like guardian angels to me. If any of you ever need my help, please don't hesitate to call. I'm 6'9" tall and 370 pounds. So I'm great for painting or moving or whatever you need. But from the bottom of my heart, thank you all. I hope the best of your dreams come true for you all. And I pray to God every night to ask him to do that for all of you guys. I know people always say bad things about lawyers, but you all are so above and beyond awesome. So once again, thank you so much. Wow. I mean,
that's powerful.
I can't add anything.
That was a very powerful letter. And coming from someone in prison, someone who is now keenly aware of how the abuse he experienced in childhood has affected his life and probably landed him in prison. Now, you got pretty emotional reading that letter. Mm-hmm. How do you balance the emotions? Obviously, the legal strategy is one thing, and you have to be very sharp for that, which you are. But you're not just doing this as a job. You find so much purpose in it. How do you balance the emotions from the work?
I don't.
No good lawyers do. I have learned that.
I don't do it very well. Look, I mean, I actually think it's okay to be moved emotionally, and to be moved to even crying. I mean, I had a really interesting experience when that one thing that came out in the about the seven different lawyers, and they call us the dream team and all that, right? We did a whole photo shoot and all this stuff, and I actually don't like that stuff. I was kind of uncomfortable. I don't.
Come on.
But I had a really bizarre day that day. Right before I had to go do that, I met a client in a convalescent hospital, and he couldn't take care of himself anymore, and his mom was taking care of him. She passed away, so he's in this convalescent hospital, so he doesn't have email. So he didn't even know about the settlement. So I went in there, and his room was pitch black, dark, 10 a.m., and he was sleeping, and I woke him up and told him about the settlement. We probably talked for half an hour and just had this really, really nice time. And in terms of connecting, and he was very happy about it. And then I went and did that photo shoot thing. And then I went to Hollywood to a facility where for stroke victims. And ironically, this facility was right down the street from a Baptist church that my dad used to preach at in Hollywood, Fountain Avenue Baptist Church. And so it was already a little emotional, right? I'm driving down Fountain Avenue going to this facility, and this facility was kind of dirty and overrun and just very depressing. And my client was naked when I walked in. He had a sheet over him and he was asleep and he had a stroke. And I kind of woke him up and explained to him that I got a settlement for him, and he was very happy. He wasn't super verbal, but yeah, I got in my car afterwards and I just wept. I don't know what to say. I just wept. And I think that's okay, and it's not just a sad type of a cry. It's also, I am a purpose-driven person. And when you see it right there, that I've affected this guy, like he's going to have some resources now to maybe help with his condition, and he has a chance to recover from his stroke, and for them just to say thank you, and for them to express gratitude, they give me back more than what I've given them. That's what I really feel like. And so, how do I balance it? I don't know. I feel it. I embrace it like a warm blanket. Like, let's go. I'm going to feel this right now. And I think that's okay. And I think it's good for us. And then I have to maintain boundaries and things like that for sure with clients, and not get too involved in some things that just don't have anything to do with the case. But at the end of the day, those types of events, like I'm sorry, but that's living. Living is not, even about the money or the living in San Diego and all the benefits of that, and the material and the consumers. And that's not what living is about. Living is about serving others and helping them. And this was a way that I was able to do that. And I will be forever grateful for the opportunity to do it. And for whatever reason, God put me in this position to be a person who can advocate for people who are suffering. And I don't think I mentioned this the last time, but I was a victim of sex abuse as a child. Maybe I did. I don't remember. So for me to be able to represent people just like me, I can relate to them. I understand them on a certain level. Like, what else is there that's better than that? And so to balance it, I don't actually consciously think about, well, how am I going to balance this? Maybe I don't do it very well. Maybe I'm a mess sometimes. I have my moments, trust me. And I have other things outside of work that I do to try to help me do, I coach football, and I take long walks, and I have 3 awesome kids that I'm now an empty nester as of a couple of weeks ago, but 3 awesome kids that I have great relationships with, and I have good friends and things like that kind of, you got to step away from it, of course. But at the end of the day, like it's been like a call. It was a calling for me to do it. And I'm just really proud of being able to help all these people. What else can you ask for?
I feel like you're exactly where you need to be. I've known you for probably 7 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I've never seen you more alive, I guess, than I do now. And I want to say, like, you're a warrior. Like, I see you as a warrior fighting for people. And not only, may I note, are you helping the people who this happened to? Clearly, that's obviously they're going to get money. You can't change what happened to them, but you're doing the next best thing, which is giving them a voice, making them feel heard, making the world know that what happened to them matters and the way it affected their lives matters. But you're also helping the potential victims of the future, that now there will be better practices in place to prevent these things from affecting future kids. I mean, kids are the most vulnerable population in our society. And when they are placed not under their control into a system that is supposed to help them get better, and that system abuses them, there's nothing worse than that. So you're literally changing the world.
When you tell me they're going to get money, it makes me think of people who, win lottery and then they go lose it or buy expensive things, or their relatives can take advantage of them. So here you're dealing with a lot of clients who are now older in their 60s, or like you mentioned, in a convalescent home who may be dying. Their relatives who may be estranged from them will hear that they're coming into this money. Now they're going to be possibly facing the risks of being taken advantage of by their friends, possible elder abuse now, right? Because they want their money.
Yep.
And like you said, they don't even know their settlement. They don't have internet or mail. Like a relative can come to their bed and, hey, sign this, and then take everything they're going to earn. Is there anything in place potentially to protect them from having a trust or having something else so that their money is protected and so they can decide who they're going to leave it to through trust, through administration?
Yeah, so we've already set them up, if they choose, with a person in a company that's going to be able to facilitate that for them. So that's already been, all that information has been provided to them on setting up some sort of framework that will protect them. The other interesting thing about this case is that their settlement, for the most part, will be paid out over 5 years. So they're going to get a little bit of a chunk. They'll get 20% of their settlement per year for 5 years. And so that could be a good thing, where they don't just get it all in one lump sum, like the lottery thing. But we can't force them to do that, but we provide the information, we recommend it, and we'll be dealing with, because this is payable out over 5 years, we're going to be dealing with our clients for the next 5 years, giving them advice, trying to support them, trying to help them.
And for those who are older and who have been separated from their spouse but are still legally married, if they don't have a will or trust in place and they die, that settlement automatically will pass on to their spouse, right? And
we have a case just like that, where a guy, he passed away, and he had a life partner, a male, who claimed that he was with him for like 15 years or something. And we were like, well, did you ever get married? Do you have a will? Do you have any like documents you can show that express his desire for whatever he gets to go to you? And he didn't have anything like that. And we found his children and his ex-wife, but she wasn't his ex-wife. They never legally got divorced. So she's like, that's my money, And so it's like, we don't really get involved in that family dynamic, but we also have a responsibility to make sure the money goes to the right people.
Well, if any of your clients may think they're divorced, but they want to know for sure, they should call us so we can look at the court records to see if a judgment was ever entered. Because what I've seen happen is people are like, oh, yeah, I paid some lawyer to divorce me. And they actually don't go through with the paperwork. And often lay people think that, automatically you're divorced 6 months later after you filed and served. And it doesn't happen if you don't submit a judgment. So many of those people who are older, who haven't seen their ex for a long time, may still be married.
I'll send them to you for sure.
So now we're going to play red flag, green flag. We are going to talk about institutional behavior for what it is, whether it's real reform or a reputational spin. You tell us if it's a red flag or a green flag and why.
All right.
You ready?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
Okay.
Settlement funds are dispersed, but survivors are forced to waive their right to public testimony.
First blush, you would say that's a red flag, but sometimes to actually get a settlement in place, you have to give up certain things. And sometimes that's maintaining confidentiality, and you can't just go around and publicly talk about it. Now, in this case, we don't really have that. And people can still talk about what happened to them and what the county did to fail them. And so I guess it depends whether it's a red flag or a green flag. I certainly prefer disclosure, and that can create more awareness and some more accountability if things are able to be disclosed pertaining to a settlement. But other times, like I said, as I'm sure you guys know, from time to time, that's the only way you actually get a settlement done is you got to give that up.
I never get a defendant to agree to waive confidentiality except for in sex harassment or sex abuse cases, because they have to.
Yeah.
So I totally understand. Okay. A county announces major reforms to its child protection policies, but doesn't fire or discipline any leadership from the time of the abuse.
Yeah. That's got red flag written all over it, right? I mean, what's the point of having a policy or procedure if you're not enforcing it? There's a reason and a purpose for policies and procedures, and And in the context of these cases, it's to protect children. And when you don't enforce it and just let behavior to continue, children are going to continue to get abused. That's what this whole case is about.
Yeah.
Well, our other guest who is suing CWS nowadays, he's saying that still happens, that these people will just get transferred to a different position and they stay.
That's an oversight issue. It's not a policy or procedure problem. It's an oversight issue. And so if you have a supervisor or somebody who is just ignoring that, then obviously that person needs to be removed. Now, how do you find out? Well, if the person who has disclosed it or the person who's talked about it notices that nothing's been done, they could go to a higher level. There's always a higher level, right? Somebody always has to answer to somebody. And so that's just an oversight issue. If somebody doesn't do something about a report, because nowadays you have mandatory reporting and you have all kinds of procedures and policies in place and laws in place.
Just comes down to enforcement again.
Comes down to enforcement.
All right. A public official apologizes on camera, but privately lobbies against transparency measures.
Well, that's a red flag. I've had this happen many times in my practice, and I won't be careful what I say. The Roman Catholic Church is the worst at this. I've had cardinals and bishops. I've heard them testify, or I've had them say in meetings that they will, that they're committed to compensating victims of sex abuse at the hands of their pedophile priests over decades of time. And then privately, they absolutely do whatever they can to not pay a dime on those cases. They file for bankruptcy, and they delay and hope people die. And so that's a major red flag for me, and actually hits me personally because I just despise that. That's almost worse than just coming out and saying we don't think this happened, and I'd have more respect for them if they did that. But to come out and to publicly claim that they're going to do something, and try to save face with the public, and then in private, where it really counts, by the way, it doesn't matter what we say in a press conference, right? What matters is what's happening behind the scenes. To go and do the opposite of that, that's just evil and dark.
A law firm launches a hotline for survivors in other counties to safely report abuse.
So that's a green flag. I mean, hotlines aren't the end all be all. Hotlines a lot of times are important. It's important who the recipient is. Make sure that you have proper training, and make sure you have people that know how to deal with crisis situations and trauma situations. But at the end of the day, it's also led to a lot of benefits in terms of, again, providing somebody a voice, even in private, where they maybe wouldn't want to come forward. It's very difficult to come forward because of the shame and humiliation and the embarrassment that's created from being abused, and the concern and the worry of how people are going to receive that, how they're going to, so sometimes you don't go to family members. I didn't. I was going to take mine to the grave, right? And so if you have a hotline or something like that where you can talk to somebody that you don't even know, but cares about you and will support you and provide you with some resources, then that's a win-win.
I always hear this quote: "What will you do with your pain?" I'm sure you've heard of it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people take their pain and they use it to be angry or victimize themselves and say how awful their lives are and blame all their problems on it. But with you, I see something so different, and it's so refreshing. And this is why I love your energy, is because you take your pain. I mean, you were abused as a child, and you've dealt with so many things in your life that I am aware of. And you have used your pain as a weapon to protect other people and help them cure their pain. And that's just very powerful. So I just want to say, on the record, I'm very proud of you.
Thanks, Mila. You're just saying that because you're my friend.
No.
I appreciate that. And I've sort of languished for many years, even in the legal field, just doing things that I just wasn't happy with or content or liked or anything, and questioned what am I doing and all those. And I do want to thank Herman Law for hiring me. They recruited me, and I kind of feel like my life sort of went full circle once I started doing this type of work, because that is true. I'm not gonna play a victim, but I can't help victims. My abuser was a male neighbor, and so it wasn't somebody who really had authority over me, and it happened just for I call it a season. And so I had really neat parents. I had a cool mom and dad, and my mom sold Avon, and my dad was a minister, and we kind of had humble beginnings, but a very loving home. And I have a really neat brother and sister that I to this day love and get together all the time. And I had really neat support within my family, and highly educated family too, And so my dad kind of pigeonholed me into being a lawyer. He said that he wanted to be a lawyer, and he felt a call to become a minister instead. But he was the, national champion in debate his freshman year at Pepperdine, and the guy was like a genius. So he had those analytical skills and the logical reasoning type of a brain, and kind of identified that in me very early. And so he was like, "You're going to be a lawyer." But once I became a lawyer, I was like, shit.
So speaking of lawyers, we have a lot of listeners who are lawyers. And a lot of people will see this verdict and think, oh yeah, $4 million verdict, of course. Like, that's so easy. No, like, I am sure that there were days when you did not think you could push one foot in front of the other, when you hit obstacles, walls, you wanted to give up. And I heard this quote, I posted about this the other day, that what is the secret to success? It's passion. And why is it passion? Because when you're passionate about something, you become literally an unstoppable force, because every time you fall down, you won't care. You will get back up again and keep going. Mm-hmm. So tell us, how many times did you want to give up and your passion drove you to keep going till you reach that $4 billion settlement?
Yeah, I work from home, and I have certain pictures or things around me that kind of McLaren Hall, by the way. Mm-hmm. Like, I've done a site visit there, and we have a diagram of it. And I've had a diagram of McLaren Hall on my wall where I just look to the right and I can see it. So I use things to keep me motivated. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I've had my moments where I'm in the corner, sucking my thumb in a fetal position and going, why am I doing this? And just some of the darkest, worst things you possibly can imagine. And just when you think it couldn't be any worse in terms of stories of my clients, you hear another one. Mm-hmm. But, I'm sort of comfortable in the dark. And so that didn't necessarily make me want to quit, but yeah, sometimes I'm like, I got to take a walk around the block, and I can't, or I just have to stop, or you just, I can't count how many hours I spent on this case. What kept me motivated were my clients, my victims. I want this to be very victim centric and not so much about me. I'd love to be out of business. I'd love to have to go do something else because there weren't any more victims around, right, to represent. So that's what I really focused on.
What's next for you?
I'm kind of going from one big case to another one. There's actually Polinsky Children's Center down here in San Diego. We have a lot of cases now for abuse that occurred in there, and it's a very similar type of a place as McLaren Hall was. It's a temporary shelter. It's still going. What we're finding is these institutionally controlled large facilities have a lot of problems if they're not managed well, because you have a ton of staff members and you have a ton of people who are interacting with children every day, all the time, and vulnerable children who have been removed from their home for some reason because of abuse and neglect. And then they're taken to a facility, and just imagine the relief that they probably have being placed in a facility where they're like, oh, okay, I'm not going to get beat up by my dad today, or I'm going to have food. I'm going to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then to go in there, pending a placement in a foster home with a more hopefully stable environment, and then be abused again, all over again, sexually. So, and people always ask me, well, where do you get your cases from, or how do you identify the cases, or where do you see that cases are coming from? Wherever there are children, there you will find pedophiles. Uh-huh. So that's their breeding ground. And when you have a large number of them all in one place, them being vulnerable children, you're going to have problems if there's a failure to protect.
It's time to get gritty. Audience Q&A, listener question. I'm a social worker and I'm overwhelmed. I see so many problems all the time, but I don't know how to speak up without risking my job. What can I do?
If somebody notices it going on, first of all, they have an absolute legal responsibility to to immediately report that to a supervisor or to somebody who can take care of it right away. There's no lag time. Don't wait a day. Don't wait an hour. You immediately report it, and then an investigation will ensue. And then, of course, you need to also follow the policies and procedures for the type of investigation you do. I have lots of cases where there was a report, they did an investigation, and they didn't do the investigation properly. Like they didn't interview the person face to face. And there's a reason why you interview a potential perpetrator face to face, so you can see body language, you can see how they answer questions. Are they sweating when you're asking them questions? They're doing it over the phone, things like that. So even like you can't just go, well, I'm just not gonna follow the procedure. You just can't be that kind of a person. You can't worry about, well, is this going to affect me? This is my boss who's the guy who's doing this. What if I do go and tell somebody? That's going to affect me personally. And I understand people that might feel that way. They got 3 kids and they got a job and they don't have, and if they say something, they don't want to get in trouble themselves because it might be their supervisor, et cetera. But you just have to have, first of all, you have to have a respect for the legal obligation that you have. And then also the courage just within you to actually be a person who wants to protect children, because that's what happens is it's not even necessarily that the policies in place are wrong or bad. It's the implementation and the enforcement of them.
And I want to add just a couple of things from an employment perspective. First of all, like you said, if employees, especially supervisors, witness this, but really any employee witnesses sex abuse or child abuse and they don't report it, they could be liable. And if a lawsuit is filed, they will be deposed.
Yeah.
And they will have to talk about it. Secondly, if they're concerned about retaliation legally, an employer is not allowed to retaliate against you for making these complaints. I've seen so often that people want to make complaints, but they're terrified, so they don't put them in writing. They just kind of tell someone. And then there's retaliation afterwards. But then you can't prove they made the complaint because it was quietly made and not in writing. So if you really want to protect yourself from retaliation, always document the complaints. Put it in writing. CC everyone you can on it so that it is investigated. And then later, if there's any retaliation against you, you can prove that it's tied to the complaint you made. Like if you get written up after you make a complaint, if your hours are cut, if you get transferred to a different position you don't want, and it's after you made a complaint and before you made the complaint your employment was perfect, that's a clear tie.
Yeah.
So it's very important what you're saying, because I think these people who have a duty to report and investigate need to really think about how this is going to impact this child's life. And it is important if it happened even once or even for a few seconds. And if it happened at all, you have to take what the child says seriously, report it up the chain, because that is going to impact this child's life for the rest of their life and can destroy it and the future generations.
And the last thing I'll say about that is also training is really important. A lot of times defense attorneys, they'll go, oh, well, this happened a long time ago. Times are different. I'm like, oh, so it was okay in the 70s to sexually abuse children? Like there's never been a time, right, where it's okay to sexually abuse children. But there was a time though where we didn't look for red flags. You're talking about the red and green flags. Well, there's a lot of red flags in sexual abuse. Usually it doesn't just happen where somebody just comes in and just abuses a kid. They get groomed. There's grooming behaviors. There's all kinds of things that you can look for. Lap sitting, for example, is a red flag. Is it responsive touching or active touching? So responsive touching is a kindergarten kid comes running up to you and gives you a hug, and you just kind of pat them on the back. That's responsive touching. That's not a sexual abuse type activity. But is it a person that you notice going towards these children and actively touching them? And where are they touching them? And so there's all kinds of red flags, grooming behaviors such as, hey, you're my guy. They isolate people and they give them benefits. We have so many clients. They were given alcohol. They were given candy. They were given drugs. They were given, hey, I'm going to let you out of McLaren Hall for a day.
Wow.
Like wild stuff. They would get into the car of the perpetrators and they would go to a different place, go to a park, get drunk, abuse them, and bring them back.
That's why these kids will blame themselves.
Yeah.
And say it's my fault.
So there's a lot of grooming. There's a lot of grooming behaviors that these people need to be trained on to identify and look for before even the abuse happens. And not like a training video where you watch it on video. You watch it on a 2-hour training video and you click the slides and you go through a weird scenario with some actor. Like an actual training session with maybe even people who do this for a living or who were victims themselves and who were groomed that can identify different ways that people do this, because that's what a pedophile does.
Is there always grooming, or I'm assuming
there's almost always grooming.
Yeah.
It doesn't usually just happen in a vacuum. There's always some grooming behavior. When you talk to the clients about, okay, when did you first meet the perpetrator? What happened? Oh, well, they would give me candy, or they would say, hey, they would incentivize it and then normalize it once it happens.
This week's glam tip. Legal reform may not feel glamorous, but integrity always is.
And fighting for the voiceless, that's power, that's purpose, and that's legacy.
Blake, thank you for showing us what the law can do when it's used with heart, intellect, and ferocity.
This case proves that even the biggest systems can be challenged and changed.
To our listeners, if you're in a system that's broken, speak up and don't stop. Justice starts with a voice.
And the right attorney. We are the glamorous grind and justice that's always in style.
See you next week.